Father Pier Luigi Maccalli is an Italian priest of the Society of African Missions. In 2018, while working in Bouanga, Niger, as a missionary priest, he was abducted by jihadists, Islamic fundamentalists. The Sahara became his prison for 2 long years. He now shares a story with us from St Joseph's SMA House Wilton, Cork in Ireland.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome. This is a very special gathering today as I sit here with Father Luigi Maccalli, an SMA priest, a member of the Italian province. He is here in Ireland on a visit while he is perfecting his English language skills. So welcome, Father Luigi.
Thank you, Father John.
So we might begin, Father Luigi, by you telling us a little bit about your own self.
I was born 63 years ago in a rural village called Madignano in northern Italy. I have one sister and 2 brothers, so we are 4 siblings. 2 of them are married with children, and my brother Walter and I are SMA missionaries.
And maybe you talk to me a little bit about your initial awareness of possibly having a missionary vocation.
Since I was 11 years old, I attended the minor seminary of my diocese, where I met some missionaries who came by to talk about mission. I was interested in African cultures, but the choice to join the SMA was influenced by my brother Walter, who had already joined the SMA. He left his job as a carpenter when he was 20 years old and made his choice to become a missionary in Africa with the SMA. So I got to know this community by visiting him from time to time, and finally I decided to make my own commitment as a priest in the SMA. And I was ordained in 1985, and my first appointment was in Ivory Coast, where I spent 10 years.
And then perhaps you might share with us a little bit about your first experience in Africa.
After 10 years in Ivory Coast, I worked for 10 years in Italy, doing animation and vocation appeals. After that, I was appointed to Niger, where I worked for 11 years in Bouanga from 27 to 2018. Niger is a vast Sahelian country that covers an area over 1,200,000 square kilometers. And of these, 3/4 is desert. On the religious levels, 99% are Muslims, and barely 1% are Christians or other traditions. The work of evangelization in Niger began thanks to the work of the SMA fathers, who founded the first Catholic mission in Niamey in 1931 with Father François Faroud, a French SMA, who was the first apostolic prefect of Niger until 1942. The evangelization work of the missionaries has always been marked by a presence that has built bonds of friendship and fraternity with the local population. Now, while the local church remains a minority, It is well integrated and respected in the country, thanks to its work of building solidarity and development. Only in 2015, the first native bishop of Niger was appointed, in the person of Father Laurent Lompo, who is now the Archbishop of Niger, of Niamey. When I arrived in Niger, I heard an idiomatic expression attributed to the first bishop of Niamey, Bishop Hippolyte Berlier. He used to say to missionaries, "I ask you to do in Niger the pastoral of the mat." The pastoral of the mat. He would say with this idiomatic expression, do nothing else but sitting down, learning the local language, and walking with the people. Great, isn't it? Yeah. This is what I have done. I started to learn Gourmand-Chema, the local language in Bomwanga, and then I moved on to visiting the small communities. The mission, in my opinion, is to bring together gospel and human development on many different levels, healthcare, education, development, and so on, but always for the sake of the gospel. My commitment to mission was based on a holistic approach, focused always on the human being, improving the human relationships and taking care of their lives by providing healthcare, water, schools, and a dispensary. So, walking with the people means working with them and sharing their hope for a better future.
And then all that changed when the kidnapping event happened.
Yeah.
So you might begin and tell us how it began.
On the evening of the 17th of September 2018, I was in my mission house. It was around 9:30 p.m. when I heard some noise outside my window. I went out to see if someone had come into the mission compound looking for some help or medication. I was surprised to see some men who quickly surrounded me, tied my arms behind my back, and pushed me off into the darkness of the night. In this way, they took me from my mission for a long journey. Toute la nuit, on a voyagé sur la moto. Mes pensées étaient mélangées. D'un côté, j'ai regardé s'il y avait une opportunité de m'enfuir, de profiter d'une distraction, quelque chose. Mais au fil des heures passaient, je voyais qu'on s'éloignait de la route, des villages. Et j'ai senti une grande solitude, absence, inquiétude. Je ne réalisais pas ce qui pouvait m'arriver encore. J'espérais que c'était simplement des voleurs qui allaient me quitter et laisser loin de la mission pour revenir à pied. C'était très confus à moi. C'est seulement quand j'ai pu demander, quand on s'est arrêté à un endroit, qui êtes-vous? Qu'est-ce que vous voulez? C'est là que l'un d'eux m'a dit, appelle-nous terroristes, djihadistes, tout est bon. C'est à ce moment-là que j'ai réalisé que c'était bien plus pire. C'était quelque chose d'énorme.
Si.
Et j'étais totalement dépassé par cette situation. Je n'ai jamais pensé, j'aurais jamais cru que cela pouvait arriver un jour. C'était vraiment un moment très, très, très dur et très difficile. Yeah.
Oui.
For 17 days, they carried me on a motorbike to the Burkina Faso border and then into Mali. On the 5th of October, they put me in chains. Then, for 22 days and nights, my foot was chained to a tree. On the 28th of October, they made a video to send to Italy as a proof that I was alive. Je m'appelle Pier Luigi Maccalli, de nationalité italienne. Aujourd'hui, c'est le 24 mars 2020.
Je m'appelle Nicola Chiacchio, et ma nationalité est italienne. Aujourd'hui, c'est le 24 mars 2020.
After that, they brought me on into the deep Sahara, where I felt lost. For 6 months, I felt a great loneliness there among my captors.
And were there other people who were kidnapped at that time?
I met 2 others, Italian men, Luca and Nicholas. They were kidnapped some months after myself. They were brought to the same place as myself, and there we were kept together. We heard from our captors that there were also other groups of prisoners, but we never saw them.
And for how long did you remain a hostage?
I counted 752 long days as a hostage. That means over 2 years. 2 years and 3 weeks. I have seen 25 new moons passing over my head. I may summarize all this long time as a prisoner in 2 words: sadness and bitterness. This time has been for me the period by far the darkest in my life.
Very difficult time.
Very long.
And now perhaps we'll move forward and you might recount to us your freedom and returning to Italy.
I was set free on the 8th of October 2020. And the next day, I landed in Rome. My family was there. I don't forget what my nephew Andrew did. He hugged me so strongly that I poured out all the tears I had left. Only those who have lost their freedom and love can fully appreciate how beautiful and powerful it is to be hugged after such a long time of loneliness. I will never forget it. I will never forget it.
J'ai besoin de temps pour vraiment laisser tout ce qui, les émotions, tout ce qu'on a vécu. Il y a des belles choses parce que en fait, j'étais dans un grand silence. Et vraiment, peut-être, je pensais, après tant d'années d'annonce de la parole, des paroles pour annoncer Jésus, l'évangile. Maintenant, on me demandait de me taire, on me demandait d'entrer dans le silence de Dieu. J'ai dit peut-être c'est ça la mission Dei, ça lui appartient. Et c'était vraiment le silence du désert. Il n'y avait que le vent, la musique du vent qui soufflait. Et c'était vraiment un moment aussi voilà, positif, parce que dans le silence, on entend d'autres choses. Et ma compagnie était les étoiles, très belles, très brillantes. Même si après, le matin, je devais combattre contre le soleil qui était très fort, la chaleur, la soif, que j'ai souffert. Mais le grand silence est aussi une bénédiction, je crois. Et on revoit, on fait un chemin intérieur qui nous amène loin et en profondeur. Je crois que peut-être j'avais besoin de ça aussi pour chercher un autre horizon pour lequel Dieu m'a appelé.
And so now that you were set free, you are back home, perhaps you might help us to understand what lessons did you learn from your experience in the desert?
I think that the silence is the greatest gift I have brought back from the desert. I was overwhelmed by the silence, especially in the first 6 months of my captivity. There was silence everywhere, outside and inside me, and I perceived God's silence as well. To all my questions, I got no answers except silence. But day by day, month by month, that long and heavy silence allowed me to go deeper and deeper into myself. I have experienced that the desert is not empty, but the best place to hear God deeper. God is silence. He is light in the darkness, and He speaks and communicates through the silence. The word of God comes from the silence. So the first lesson I learned was to pray differently. I like what St. John of the Cross has said about prayer. Prayer is the harmony of two silences. And the second lesson I brought from my story was to love and forgive my enemies. Yes, I have pardoned and forgiven my captors. I said to Abu Nazer, the leader of my captors, on the last day, may God help us to understand that we are all brothers. Before leaving the desert for freedom, I forgave him. War is never the solution, but forgiveness leads us to peace. Today my mission is about testifying that the gospel is a message of mercy, forgiveness and peace.
And perhaps looking forward now, what message would you like to have for people like me and other people who will hear about your experience?
I don't have a lesson. I don't have anything to say. I'm just sharing my life and my experience. But today I would like to say, let us disarm our words. Because the words are the spark that starts every conflict. From the words we go to hands. And if these hands are armed, have weapons, we easily kill people, and then the war begins. Let us disarm our words, to allow our eyes to see each other, not as enemies, but brothers and sisters. Let us disarm our words, to disarm our heart, and learn to welcome everyone. Oui, yes. Let there be peace. Let there be peace.
I am conscious that I and many other people were aware that you had been taken as a prisoner, that you had been kidnapped. We did not know exactly where you were in the beginning, but we were assured at some point that you were still alive. So maybe this is an occasion for us to appreciate all the people who supported you, mainly by their prayers.
Really. Thank you, thank you. Thank you very much for your prayer and support during my time of need in captivity. I'm sure my freedom is the fruit of your prayer. Thank you so much. And please, don't forget to keep praying for peace in Africa and in our world. Thank you very much. I can share with you three objects that I brought home from my captivity. I call them the three gifts of my desert experience. Here they are. A chain, a rosary, and this little cross that I made myself. The chain first. This is one link or a piece of the chain that I had on my feet. This link is the only part that I was able to open because it was not welded. I was chained on 2 occasions. The first time was after 17 days on motorbike. I remember it was on the 5th October 2018. A man came with a chain 1.5 meters long, and he put one end of the chain round my ankle and the other end round a tree. For 22 days I was held there, day and night. I cried out all my pain to God. Why have you forsaken me? Why do you would forget me? Why do you allow this chain to be put on my leg? After that, I was taken away into the Sahara. For a whole year, the Sahara was my open-air prison. For the first 6 months, I was the only prisoner held there. Then I was joined by 2 other hostages. The guards took off the chain, but on the 14th September 2019, they put it on again. This happened because one prisoner tried to escape during the night. For that time on, I was in chains, up each night from sunset to sunrise, until my release. I can assure you that sleeping in chain was very, very uncomfortable. The second thing is the rosary. This rosary reminds me what is the most essential thing for a meaningful life. I made this rosary myself from the material used to protect me from the sun. I tied 10 knots so that with it I could say 1 decade of rosary. Even now, I use it to pray for all the innocent victims of the war. Every morning, that is my first intention. So this rosary reminds me that the important thing in life is relationship. You know, in the desert, water is essential to survive. And during my desert time, I have suffered thirst. But my biggest suffering was not to be able to communicate with my family, not to be able to tell them that I was neither sick or wounded. I was thirsty for relationship. Finally, the third gift is the cross. I made this cross by myself, but I didn't show it to anyone. I have always hidden it in my pocket. This cross reminds me of the silence. Now I know that silence is the greatest gift I have brought back from my desert. The key symbol of my desert experience is the cross. Jesus on the cross experienced the silence of God, but then he could say, "Into your hands, Father, I commend my spirit." In the desert I learned what the naked faith is. To let go all things I took for granted as urgent or important. And then I say in the words of Saint Charles de Foucault, "Father, I abandon myself into your hands. Do with me what you will.